Welcome to Ignite Intimacy, a podcast exploring intimacy, romantic relationships, sexuality, and everything that relates to these hot topics. We're going in. Are you ready? This is your host, Laura Aisha. Let's do this. Hello, Ignite Intimacy community. This is Miss Laura Aisha, and oh, have we got an episode for you today? This is thrilling and exciting and energizing for me. I have had my eye on these two folks for a minute now, and I've had several people from the Ignite Intimacy community say, when are you going to have Jaiya and Ian on the line? So with the help of a dear friend, mutual friend, Lindsay Miller, who was on one of the very first Ignite Intimacy episodes, check it out. It's like episode 5 or 6, something like that. She connected me with Ian and Jaiya, who are on the line with us today. What's up, you two?
Hey.
Loving it.
Loving it. Ready to roll.
Yes. Awesome. So, okay, I have been hearing about you two through a handful of different friends of mine. I actually have a very dear friend in LA who was at a recent event that you did out in Malibu or Santa Monica or something like that. I think it was probably in the mid to late fall. And I think she went one day and then her husband went the other day. And she was just totally blown away by the work that you were doing. Especially she mentioned the energetic orgasm and just, and
we know what day she was there.
Okay, so we're going to have to dive into that. But let me just preface the conversation here for our listeners. So Jaiya, if you're unfamiliar with Jaiya is an internationally recognized and award-winning sexologist. She's also a best-selling author. She created the Erotic Blueprint breakthrough, which is something that we're going to be discussing a lot about today. And I actually did the Erotic Blueprint quiz, which was awesome. And it told me my erotic blueprint and started to give me a little more like permission and juice to be who I am as a sexual being in the world. So we're going to dive into a whole bunch of different things, but Ian and Jaiya have worked with some incredible people in the world. They have created programs. Jaiya does a lot of speaking. And I think you guys, did you just do something recently with Tony Robbins or?
Yeah. We just did the podcast with him.
Tony Robbins podcast. Yep.
Oh, that's cool. Okay, great. So
the message is spreading. The word's getting out.
Yay. Well,
pleasure takeover.
Well, I have to say, so Ian and Jaiya sent me a couple of videos to check out that I don't even think they're released yet, but I have to say, I was watching this one video. It's just like, whoa, the energy of the work. It was like everything in my body just lit up and I felt turned on. I felt alive. I felt like, ooh, just like, ooh, and all that yummy, juicy energy. So I'd really love to just kind of start with some of your origin story and just how you got into this work. I guess we'll start with you, Jaiya. Just what was your path to doing this work? And then how did you and Ian come together?
It started when I was really young with you'll show me yours, I'll show you mine, softer game. I think I've just been inherently obsessed with sexuality and human sexuality I remember all the way back. Like, I think I was just born, some people are born to play drums and some people are born to be accountants. I was born to teach eroticism and work in the field of sexuality. So it's been, when I was young, I wanted to be Dr. Ruth. Like that's what I wanted to aspire to be. I wanted to work in sexuality. I wanted to help people with their sex lives. And somewhere I must have seen her and it just became an obsession and has been ever since.
That's amazing. Speaking of Dr. Ruth, I actually met her one time. She was just on a total synchronistic tip. She was going to be doing an event at a girlfriend of mine's house in Connecticut. And I just happened to be going to meet my girlfriend. So she said, meet me at my parents' house. And I get there and literally Dr. Ruth shows up 5 minutes later.
Pretty surreal.
It was so surreal.
We had a chance to see her speak And it was just really interesting to see, because she's still the feisty woman who's just like in your face about sexuality. Is so great.
Oh
so
yeah.
great.
Well, and she's so tiny. She's
Teen-
she's in Jamaica, they say little batalawa, like she's little but so powerful.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and the greatest thing about that was that she was like, oh, my shoulders are sore. And we just sort of like brought her to this room where she could sit and relax. She said, honey, would you rub my shoulders for a few minutes? I was like, yeah. So,
yeah,
okay. So
she was
you had
a huge inspiration for this whole thing. And then I think, Ian, I don't know, your origin story, I drug you into this.
I fell in love with the sexologist. That's kind of how I made my way and merging into this world.
Yeah, VH1 did a show, and it was called I Was Married to A, and it was just people who are in really interesting relationships with people who have interesting professions. And so Ian...
I'm married to a sex, and we're not married, but, I'm with a sex expert. So that was the big controversy there.
And all the crazy things I drag him into.
Yeah.
Okay, so can you talk to us a little bit about that? The crazy things you drag him into.
We've got stories on that one.
Where do you want to begin? Because we got a lot of stories.
Well, Jaiya's this world-renowned sexologist. I get into a relationship with her, and our first year of relationship is just really juicy and hot, and the energy is all there.
And I told him, I have to make an agreement with you because I write publicly about my sex life. So are you ready for that?
And I was going through basically a sexual revolution of my own. I had been married. I got divorced. I ended up in a couple of short-term monogamous relationships after that. And I just hit a point where I was kind of like, I need to bust this up a little bit because I'm not really being my authentic self. I'm kind of putting myself in a box to be lovable and acceptable. And this woman showed up in this dance community of mine. I didn't know who she was. She was kind of standing there in the middle of all of this chaotic, ecstatic dance movement, very still. So I was very intrigued by her. And then eventually, one or two dances later, I decided to go and do my magic on her, which I'm a contact improvisational dancer. So I just kind of scooped up behind her and started spinning her around and flipping her over my shoulders and, taking her on a roller coaster ride. And she didn't know who I was or anything. And she says that that's the first time she ever surrendered to a man.
It was the first time I don't know if any of you have ever had that experience where someone touches your body. It's like your whole body takes a sigh. It's like my whole body let go. And I was like, who is this person?
Yummy.
And, it kind of started there. I blamed that dance on everything afterwards.
Blame.
And in a good way. You got to blame people for the good stuff. Tony Robbins says that too. If you're going to blame for the bad stuff, you got to blame for everything. So, we do these crazy experiments we call them sex life challenges. And this is one of the things I think a lot of people miss in their sex life and why they don't get the results and why they don't have the experiences that they want in their love lives is because we don't have practice around it. Just like learning to play the piano, just like, getting your body in shape, anything that you want in life, having a practice is vital. And we don't think about, let's have a sex life practice.
Yeah.
So it's been something I've been very committed to ever since I was 17 on. Mm-hmm. I've pretty much had some kind of ongoing practice. And so I drag Ian into crazy experiments. We did one experiment was 40 days of kink where I dominated him for 40 days and then we flipped and then he dominated me for 40 days. And that was crazy. We were doing 2-3 hour scenes every night.
Oh my gosh.
I got spanked so hard, not by Ian, but when I was learning, because we're also learning as we're doing it. We're going to professionals
who are training us on all the techniques and ways to do effective kink.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I couldn't sit for 3 weeks, so Ian had to rub arnica on my butt every night as my. I was like, see how I suffered for you. So, and then right now we're in a pretty epic experiments. We just recently decided probably our most advanced kids do not try this at home. Our most advanced challenge ever, which is at the new year, we decided to let go of everything we know in our relationship. We've been together over a decade. We have a child together. We've lived together for most of our relationship. And we just were like, we got to bust this up. We got to break patterns because you start getting in patterns. It's like living in a house you've been living in too long and there's too much dust in the corners and you gotta like shift it up. And so I decided I'm going to do a sex cleanse, and we're not going to have any sex. And so we still have not had intercourse to this date. It's almost been 2 months now.
Mhm.
Wow.
And we let go of every agreement, and we rebuilt our relationship. We reinvented our relationship.
We're still in the reinvention because
Yes.
we're pulling apart what existed. We've actually changed structures massively. So
we got an apartment outside the house that Ian stays in.
We went from living in the same house together to having a house and an apartment. And so not sleeping in the same bed, really calling into question. We did a whole period during here where we
didn't even touch.
And then we also had a point of only being able to process, like if there was emotional stuff going on, we would only turn to each other
for 20 minutes.
For 20 minutes on any given day. And we'd set a timer, and that was it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And so every 2 weeks we renegotiate all of our agreements. And, we're the end goal is our epic relationship and our epic life, because ultimately we want to have each other's needs met. And I may have needs that weren't getting met or not spoken. And boy, there's so much erotic tension between us. It's insane.
So,
God, I'd love to be a fly on the wall when that occurs.
When we consummate our relationship again.
Yes.
We've been teasing out slowly merging back together, and it is insanely hot. The tension that exists and the amount of erotic energy that's just flowing between us.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of erotic blueprints, I've actually developed and expanded into new territory in my erotic map. And we flipped the switch. I was always the one but wanting sex, desiring sex, wanting Ian to come towards. And now we flipped it completely. And Ian is like, come on, please, woman.
Let's do this.
And I'm like, no. And so it's been really great to just feel the switch and to rewire and repattern.
And I want to, well, go ahead.
Well, yeah, I just need to honor you two for the courage and really like emotional maturity that it takes to do this. Because I believe that if more couples could do this, there would certainly be a decrease in infidelity and the need for that, the need to go outside of the relationship. It recalibrates, right? So like there are so many things in life that have a recalibration period. And you're right. It's like things get stagnant when you're together, even relationships that are very, I'm going to assume, I don't know you personally. I'm going to assume though that you have a very connected relationship, and even in that environment, which is the optimal, things get stagnant. You no longer notice the cobwebs in the corner. You forget to dust that one shelf, or, things just sort of stay where they are. And then in the uncovering, you start to realize like, oh, wow, okay, that was there, wasn't speaking that was there, feeling fear around that. So I just really want to honor and acknowledge what it took to enter into this, what you originally called it, relationship vapasana.
Yeah. One of the things, a great friend of ours now, and she's been a coach to us many times, Kristen Sweeting Morelli, she started calling things out. We've only known her for about 1.5 years, but she came into our life with like a tornado. And really, she can't be around energy that it doesn't work. So anything that she was noticing between us, she would call out. And it started to tear apart a lot of the foundations of just like enmeshment, areas where we were connecting, being codependent, not calling out the things that we need, not calling each other to account on what we say our commitment is to each other. And at times it's been insanely hard. And because we both have a commitment to this higher level of relationship, we can't ignore it. We need to put it to practice, and we need to like pull it apart to unenmesh and create it anew.
And we have an epic relationship. I mean, so we look at each other all the time. We're like, oh my God, like it's incredible, the relationship that we have and the connection that we have. And there's still stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that this is really important. A lot of our students, a lot of our clients hear us and they're like, oh, thank you, because I think I have to be perfect, or thank you because I think I have to, we have a bunch of coaches. They're like, I think I have to have it all figured out. Look, I'm going to be figuring this stuff out for the rest of my life.
That's
I'm going to
right.
be learning about sex for the rest of my life. That's what a master does. A master on any topic is constantly course correcting, constantly getting more conscious. And one of my missions on this planet is that we get conscious about sex. We've got to do it. It is time right now to bring up the gunk and get conscious and get this conversation about sex to something where we're celebrating and cultivating sexuality instead of being in the muck mire, pain, shame, disconnection, silence around it, so that we can heal as a culture.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. There is, across all cultures, across the human community through the ages, just so much trauma and suppression and judgment and shame. And you can't flourish in that environment.
No. And relationships are wandering around in the dark, trying to figure out their sexuality, trying to figure out what pleases them, because we become so detached from our own pleasure because of all of the cultural mythology built around sex that it's bad, shameful, wrong.
And I'll go even further and say I ask people, so I want everybody listening to think about this. Where did you get your sex education? What was your sex education? Now, when I ask audiences this all over the world, people will tell me, I didn't get a sex education. Or I kind of got one in health class. That's what I hear. And I want you to think about it right now. Where did you get your sex education? And let me flip this, which is you all got a sex education. You all learned about sexuality, and it happened from the moment you were little. What did your parents call your genitals? How did they treat you if you touched yourself the first time? What were the messages you were getting and picking up from the culture, from other girls in school? Was it bad to have made out the night before? Now you've got a reputation at school the next day. I was that girl. I kissed some boy at 2 minutes in heaven in the closet, whatever that game was.
Oh, yeah.
I was pregnant all over the school, and I think I was in like 7th grade or something. So we all have those stories, and those are the things that gave us our sex education. Because of the lack of quality, good, comprehensive sex education in our culture, we then get messages instead that become our sex education. And so I argue that you did get a sex education. It just wasn't a good one.
Yes.
Yeah. And I know I got the first time I ever saw active sex was friends' parents' hustler magazines that were buried at the bottom of a basket in their bathroom. And I was shocked. First of all, I was like, holy shit. But even though I had already been exploring sexuality before that time. And in my family, it was just Roman Catholic. You don't have sex till you're married. And that was the long and short of it. I never heard my parents have sex. I never saw them be intimate or affectionate with each other. And there was a lot of this underlying shame energy around sex and sexuality. And I'm energetic, and I am a curious explorer in life, pretty much on all levels. So there was a lot of that going into school the next day. And, the first guy I had sex with had told a bunch of people, and, and I just remember being absolutely gutted.
Yeah. Right. Man. So, this all kind of leads back to what it is that we're up to, which is creating a language that redefines how we talk about it, and also gives people a language to actually get into what it is that turns them on, what they need, be able to articulate with a partner, this is what I need, what do you need? And finding it not just in language, but finding it through the body. So it ties it back to the erotic blueprints, which we haven't really dived into here yet. But you mentioned that you're an energetic. So was that your result when you took the quiz?
That was my result. Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome.
So
let's talk about, should we dive in and talk about this? Okay.
And so if people want to pull up the erotic blueprint, what is the web link for that?
So they can find it at eroticbreakthrough.com/ignite.
Awesome.
Is where they can go, and you can take the quiz. So you guys can listen to us as we're doing this, but also, if you want to take the quiz, please do that. It'll not just give you your primary type, but it will also give you percentages of all the types. So for example, I'm mostly sexual blueprint, which I'll talk about what that blueprint means. And Ian is mostly kinky blueprint, but we have shades of the other blueprints. And this gives you an entire map of your eroticism.
Oh, great. Okay, cool. And we'll have that link in the show notes as well.
Cool.
Awesome. So we'll dive in with the energetic. I kind of have an order of them.
Yeah.
I don't know where this word came from, but the energetic is someone who's turned on by space, tease, anticipation, yearning, longing. Their superpowers are that they are very sensitive, which means that they could have orgasms without even being touched. You talked about energetic orgasms in that demonstration that we did at our event. It's one of my superpowers. So I'm primarily sexual blueprinted, but I have energetic as a strong second. And so I've developed an ability to have orgasms. Ian can play with me, and he's expanded into this blueprint. He can play with me without touching my body, and I can just have all kinds of crazy, amazing orgasms, and my body does all kinds of amazing things. We can talk more about that as we move through all these different blueprints and kind of what each blueprint's orgasmic superpowers are. And that's one of them, of the energetic. So thinking yourself to orgasm. Someone's across the room, you could have the orgasm. I had an orgasm once from someone, like we had all this erotic tension for like 4 years. And the moment he kissed me, I instantly went into an orgasm.
Wow.
Like that, like I don't need the clothes off and the genital touch at all. It can go into instant orgasm. So energetics, they are like the Jedi Knights, they're like the people with the magic skills.
So for those who are not energetic, people like myself, I've expanded into it like Jaiya says, but the energetic was kind of like woo-woo out there. What is that? That's total voodoo.
How can you feel pleasure by not being touched?
Yeah. It's like, oh, is that real? But I've heard people watch you two do it, and it sounds pretty real to me.
Yeah.
And so if you've ever experienced during sex where you start to twitch or like jerk, like your body starts to kind of like wave, or your spine waves or twitches, you're not weird. So that's the biggest, like energetics really can judge themselves as being very weird. Like, I'm weird, something's wrong with me. All of the blueprints can have their own judgment of I'm broken. And that's one of my big goals with teaching this is you're not broken sexually. Everything that you desire is normal. Like I want people to really get that idea that you're normal, you're not weird, you're not broken. We are all just wired differently erotically, and we live in a culture that is sexual blueprinted mainly. So we think that anything outside of that is outside of the norm. Or we also have gender stereotypes that also play a role in this as well. So for the energetic, the shadow piece, and if you're listening, you may relate to this too, is if someone touches you too quick, too fast, like, if you go straight for the genitals, for example, you may shut down, turn off, and just completely short circuit. Like your body gets into overwhelm and you short circuit. You may also be in the throes of all this turn on. And then when it starts to move too physical or starts to move into intercourse, you're just like, where did it all go? There was so much heat. What just happened? Those are things that can happen because the energetic is so sensitive that they can be overly sensitive, which then creates some shutdown. And I'd also say overly hierarchical too. Like we can be very judgy of other blueprints. Like your chakras are not as aligned as mine. You eat hamburgers and watch television. What's the matter with you?
So the energetic will often associate sexual activity to transcendence, right? Connection with God, to connection to the spiritual. And if it's non-spiritual or base, in quotes, sexuality of just having sex, orgasms, penetration, all that kind of stuff, that's where the judgment can come in.
I had to learn sex for pleasure because for me, sex was about transmuting energy for enlightenment. Sex for me was okay if it was love. It was okay if I was transcending my physical body, but to utilize sex just purely for pleasure, that was still taboo for me. So that was part of my journey.
Interesting.
Yeah. So are we ready for sensual?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So how many erotic blueprints are there actually?
So there's 5. So if you're taking notes, and I highly advise everyone to take notes. If you're like me, I like to take my notes where I put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I like to have it all so I know. So if you're one of those people, there's 5 erotic blueprints, so you can organize your notes accordingly.
Keep a category for the 6th mystery blueprint type. We have not officially made a type yet.
Yes. Okay, so, and I do want to back up just a little bit to how I discovered these. So in my work, I work with people's bodies a lot. And I noticed patterns over time of how different people were aroused differently. I work with a lot of men with erectile dysfunction and a lot of women who just are like, I have no desire, I have no libido, where's my arousal? And I started to notice these patterns that different people would be like, for example, like when I really started getting tuned into this, I had someone who I was hovering my hands over his body and he got this erection and his eyes got really big and his body was shaking. And he's like, what are you doing to me? And he thought it was me doing something to him. But I was like, no, you're just energetically wired. And his partner had been like, pogo sticking his penis, trying to like, get him hard. And that wasn't working because he's not a sexual type. And so we just have to know, like, okay, that's where these blueprints come in. And that's kind of where they started, was just my work with my clients to really figure out and hack how are people aroused.
Very cool.
Go ahead.
No, I love that. I really love to know where it came from. And how that discovery happened. And then what I'm really getting from this, and just getting from watching the video that comes with your type and exploring it a little bit more, is just, it gives you permission to be who you are.
Yes.
Which takes the shame and all those funky thoughts, feelings, energies out of it. Because it's like, oh, this is who I am.
Right.
So it's permission.
For energetics, they're one of the most misunderstood of the types, because we don't see much of it. And if you do see any of it, it's usually in that kind of woo-woo out there spiritual world of the tantras and the tantrikas. And there's not that many people who are exposed to that. And for me, seeing the energetic, I like my anus clenches around, like,
and not in a good way.
Not in a good way. Around too much like overt spirituality. I get a little uptight around it. So I didn't have access to it. But now that I see how it works and I've been immersed in that world, it's opened me to another experience of my eroticism that wasn't even available to me, because it just was weird. It was out there and I had judgment of it.
Yeah.
And just to reinforce, Jaiya's a somatic sexologist, which is of the body. And this work came from observation, basically almost like clinical study of
20 years of
arousal.
Wow. And
it wasn't something that she imposed externally and said, I'm looking for this. It just started showing up, and she started realizing, oh my God, over and over again, I'm seeing these patterns, and it's coming from the body. And when I tap into it, it's not a cure-all or anything like that, but when I tap into the right blueprint for the person, maybe they did have erectile dysfunction. Maybe they weren't getting turned on, or they couldn't access their arousal. But we can talk about it with kinky when we get there. But once you tap into it, it's instant turn on.
And I will also add just honoring, if you are partnered or if you're dating, honoring other people, because you honor who they are as erotic beings. You mentioned like just honoring yourself, but then there's the like, oh, and I'll tell a story about this as we go into and how that played out with Ian and I as we go into the sensual, because I want to get to it. I know people are salivating.
Yeah, right,
like, what are these? So the sensual is turned on by all of their senses being ignited. So it's the smell, it's the taste. My mouth starts watering as I'm starting to talk about it.
Textures, colors, the right music, the lighting in the room, the way that the flowers or the smells of the body, all of these things can become an instant turn on and create their own orgasmic experience for the sensual.
And so Ian and I right now, we're in our bed. It is a big, heavy fur comforter. And we have, flowers, and we have the aromatherapy, and like our bedroom is a sensual experience because it's one of Ian's primaries. And I'm just now through this challenge that we're doing of no sex, was big for breaking patterns for me. Sensual was my least developed blueprint, and I was the one I'm most resistant to. Wow. And now I've expanded into it because of the creation of our challenge that we're just now in. So I want anybody to know that like our blueprints just show us where we're limited. We want to be able to have all full spectrum. So full spectrum sexuality is being able to really speak all of these. I'll talk more about that as we go through them. So the sensual superpowers, they can have orgasms like a taste in their mouth. like food gasms. They can have full body orgasms because the sensual is a full body orgasmic creature. It's licking in between my toes all the way up my skin of my inner thigh, all the way over my genitals, all the way up to the top and the crown of my head, and worshiping every inch of the body. And that brings one of their superpowers, which is beauty to the sexual experience, full bodied experience, full bodied orgasm, and orgasm from the senses.
And one of the things that distinguishes the type of touch. For the energetic, there's all of that distance and anticipation and hovering touch and slowness. With the sensual, it's much more about contouring touch and like getting into the muscle. And it can still be slow, but it's really connecting deep into the body tissue.
It's body to body.
Body to body. Cuddling, getting all cozy together.
I think this might be one of your secondaries. I hear you umming.
Yeah. I'm like, yum, 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 yum.
Yes. So this blueprint is the yummy blueprint. If I'm going to give one of them a yummy, this is the yummy indulgence of pleasure.
I would also say it's the other one that is our stereotype of what sexuality is. We have the sexual stereotyping.
For men, usually male gendered, people. And usually this is one of the complaints we hear from a lot of people is I went to the therapist for my sex life and I said, go home and light candles for her and put her a hot bubble bath. Well, not all women are sensuals.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And men are sexuals. And this is a lot of what we found. We've now had how many thousands of people take the quiz?
40 to 45,000 people.
45,000 people take this quiz now.
Wow.
Lots of information. So it's another reason why we want to encourage you, because we're also compiling data of how many women are this blueprint, how many men.
Which will not be sold or shared with anybody else.
No, it's all confidential.
All confidential.
But we have, we're collecting that data on just getting a viewpoint of like breaking down the stereotypes. We have a lot of sensual, we have a lot of energetic men. And people's sexuality is much more complex. We say, oh, male sexuality is simple. No, it's not.
No, it is not.
Yeah.
It is not at all. And so that's one of the things we've learned. So sensual shadow is when you get caught in your head. So I want to go to the shadow piece. A lot of the sensuals, even though full body is their, positive aspect, when they get caught up in their head, so maybe you relate to this, you're in the middle of oral sex and all of a sudden you're like, I hope everything's okay down there. Did I shave okay? Does it smell okay? Oh my goodness, I forgot to call that person back yesterday. Oh no, the laundry is still in the washing machine. And
the light's up a little too bright. Oh, it just switched to that song. Oh, I hate this part of this song.
I have a little of that too.
Yes.
So if you relate to that, you may have some of the sensual shadow. You may have a positive of one and a shadow of another. So really, I want to look at this as a holistic map, but a lot of times they match. So if you have sensual shadow, it could be that. It could be fear of mess. Nobody around you can get anything right. The environment's not perfect enough. Like those are some of the things that can show up for sensuals is they just get rocked in their head. And so here's this funny story that I want to share about Ian and I is we're in the middle of playing. He's doing energetic play over my vulva and I'm shaking and jerking and twitching.
I'm hovering my hands. I'm really connected and really present with her.
Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden he gets up and he walks over to the iPad that's over across the room. And for an energetic, just to understand, and those of you who are energetic may relate, when someone does that, it's like pulling a light socket out of a plug. All of a sudden, like, wait, where did you go? What's going on? And I look at him and I was like, what's going on? And he goes, it's just my sensual. And at that moment, I could laugh because I completely understood. In order for him to be present with me and to really give me the experience that I wanted, he had to go change that music. The song was wrong.
Yeah.
He had to go change that song. And I could laugh in that moment instead of being pissed at him about why did you just abandon me and my body and my energy and
Now, if I did that every time we were playing energetically, she'd get pissed at me.
Totally, yeah.
So I wouldn't recommend that.
Yeah.
Oh, and just, this is probably obvious, but I just want to put a fine line under it. Jaiya's talking about the shadow side. So every blueprint has its light and it has its shadow. And the light is all the stuff that says yes and gets you into your turn on and gets you connected to your eroticism. And the shadows are the brakes. As Emily Nagoski talks about in her book, Come As You Are, it's the brakes. It's what stops you from being able to connect. So the shadow part is all of that stuff that stops you.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, some people have more of the positives, more of the light of it, and some people have more of the shadows. And really, and I'll talk about what to do with these blueprints now that you guys have learned it. in a bit. So there's four key points of what to do with these blueprints if you want to take those in your notes.
Yeah.
So let's move to the sexual. This is my primary blueprint when I'm in a relationship. I'm mostly sexual. So I want you to imagine this. Ian and I, we just had a baby. We're in bed at night and Ian comes to bed and I'll put my hand on his cock and say, do you want to have sex tonight? And he is completely turned off. And he comes to bed on another night and he cuddles with me. And I'm like, oh, I guess we're cuddling again.
Are we just going to sleep? We must be going to sleep.
We must be going to
sleep. This is what she's thinking.
And I lay there like stiff and still. And so this was our difference. So this was his sensual meeting my sexual, right? My sexual goes, this equals sex. I touch genitals, you touch genitals.
This is how we get turned on.
That's how we're getting turned on.
Yeah.
And he cuddles, which is that's how I get turned on. And so we were completely missing wires. So then what we do, we roll over. I cry myself to sleep at night because I'm incongruent with my work. We aren't having sex. I'm making up a story in my head that he's not really attracted to me. Like what man in the world, if I'm touching his cock and I know 50,000 sex techniques, I've written 4 books on sex techniques, is why is he like not turned on? I don't understand. I'm doing striptease class. Like what's going on?
Well, it's kind of a relief that you have those moments.
Oh,
yeah.
Yes. And when we talk about these challenges that we put ourselves through, many of them are born out of shit that's not working. Like this is just not working. And we need to figure out how to get to the other side of it because we're committed to the relationship. We're committed to passion. We're committed to making it happen. But a lot of it comes from actual like deep pain.
Yep. So I was in my deep pain, crying myself to sleep at night. In the meantime, in my practice, I'm noticing all these blueprints.
Well, and my side of the story is our sex life is failing and I am losing confidence. I feel like I can't please my woman and I'm not, because we just had this child and my hormones have taken a tank. A lot of people don't talk about men going through postpartum depression and having like high oxytocin. So and estrogen. So my testosterone is bottomed out. I'm losing confidence. I feel like I'm losing her because she's left completely unsatisfied. And I can't just jump into my sexual because it's not a primary blueprint for me. So I'm not connected to my own sexuality, which then just bred more disconnection, a sense of failure on my part, and a sense of like, I'm not loved. He doesn't think I'm sexy. I got to go find another man kind of thing.
Happy ending to the story as we discover the blueprints and I discover his, which is the next one. But let me talk about the sexual. We're leaving all these like little cliffs here.
Open loops.
And so for the sexual superpower is so much fun, simple. And I would say, there's not a lot of complexity, but they love nudity, orgasms, penetration, what we think of as sex in our culture. The superpower is that there's orgasm and arousal can be 0 to 60. Like I can have an orgasm literally in a matter of seconds.
Wow.
It does not take much. Touch my clitoris in the right way and kaboom. How many orgasms was I having last night all over the place? Like crazy orgasmic.
Yeah, kept rolling.
So this is interesting. I want to interject here just because I have had some people challenge me on what is sex.
Good question.
It depends on which blueprint you're talking to. And I felt your sexual energy. We just had sex. A sensual is rubbed oil all over each other. And
we got, did a lot of heavy petting and kissing and was completely aroused and turned on. And that could be sex.
And for an energetic, sexual, and this is where we are limited. So I would say this is actually a shadow of the sexual. Sex equals I am turned on, meaning for a male-bodied person, I have an erection. And for a female-bodied person, it means I'm wet or I'm aroused. Like I feel all this arousal and blood flow in my genitals. I will say that's a mythology. So
about
I just
being wet,
want the wet and erection. You can be completely aroused and have neither one. And so this mythology, but also this limited definition of sex equals I had this arousal, you were wet, I had erection,
we penetrated
something, and this can be different for same-sex couples. So I just want to say that. And we got to a climax. There was an end to it. If we don't have that, it is unsuccessful sex. So let me tell you an example of a client. I work with a lot of people who go through prostate cancer or some kind of genital cancer or hysterectomy, or they can't have sex anymore. And it means sex is over. And what I'll do with these clients, I had a client, heart attack and prostate cancer. And I mean, it all hit like a stroke, all of it hit at once. And sometimes when their operations and nerves are severed, it's really challenging. And what we did was we taught him how to be energetic. And all of a sudden he was like, holy moly, mother of my sex life is not over. But because he was trapped in the definition of, I need to have an erection, we need to have penetration, and we need to have this kind of climax, that's the trap of the sexual. So because that becomes the only thing that's successful sex. I'll say also shadow of the sexual is, what's wrong with you? Like, everybody else is fine. I gave everybody else orgasms. And
why do we have to do all this complicated stuff? Why do I have to have candlelight?
Why are you complexifying this? I'm touching your cock. Like, oh, can I say that?
Yes.
I'm touching your like I'm touching you. Why are you not hard like that?
Or I'm standing here naked. My body is available to you. Why are we not having sex?
Yeah. So my sexual just couldn't get Ian's. Like, you're a man. Like, what? Like,
what's wrong here?
I'm caught in the mythology of it. And on the I want to give the sexuals a little bit more positives. Sexuals have a lot of charisma. We have a lot of drive. We bring the juice. We're the like drivers. And we feel very appreciated. Like, everything is right in the world when our sex life is right. So a sensual will have sex to relax. Or a sensual will need to relax before they can have sex. A sexual has sex for tension relief. I can be stressed out of my mind and I still have a drive and I want to have sex. So, because it feels good and everything feels right in the world. I can go conquer the world as long as I'm having really good sex.
It's actually totally puzzling to me. Like, when we're in deep, stressful times in our life and she still like is there for sex. Because when I'm in a stressful zone, it's like so far off the table for me. I'm just not there. It's crazy.
Yeah. So maybe you all are starting to hear, if you've had a past relationship or a partner in this, where these are. And I know in your notebooks, you're ready for the next one. So let's dive into that one, because I know it's Ian's primary.
Awesome.
And this is kinky. And so once I discovered Ian was kinky, I just get out ropes now and I see erections like I've never seen. So I'm trying striptease classes and touching him, and that was, but I tap into his blueprint and we're all good. So 2 different types of kinkies. There's the psychological base. This is somebody who is turned on by the power dynamic and their brain being stimulated. If I tap into kinky, it's going to be here, which is, I want somebody to say, stand across the room so I can look at you.
Stick your ass out just a little bit more. Oh, that's such a pretty pose. You look so gorgeous over there. She's getting red cheeks right now.
Yeah. So, I want to be pretty. I want to be played with, but I don't necessarily want to be touched in the kinky dynamic and the powerful dynamic of I'm giving my power over to someone, or I'm taking power over someone. So that's the psychological based. And then there's people who are a little bit more sensation based, or completely sensation based. Ian is more sensation based. He likes the feeling of the ropes.
I would say I'm both. So there's a lot of psychological in my kinky, but the initial way that we tapped into it was mostly through the physical, which is like constriction, like heavy constriction. I'm not so much of an impact person, but I'm actually discovering that
he is.
Maybe I am. But so, constriction, impact, and then mixing that in with psychological aspects starts to really turn up the heat for me.
And so for some of you who are listening who aren't familiar with kink, impact just means things like spanking, slapping. If you get into really more intense stuff, pounding, punching, tackling.
Yeah. So this is one of the things.
Paddles.
This is
props,
one of the
whips.
things.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, the shadow aspect of the kinky is mostly driven by shame, or often driven by shame. Like, what's wrong with me? Why is this weird thing such a turn on for me? And one of the things that we really try to distinguish for people around kink is that kink it's not all the stereotype about it is it's dungeons and chains and hooks and
and that could be it.
That could
there's
totally
no
be
shame
it.
if
No
that's
shame
it.
in that, but we pull it back even further, that it is about whatever is taboo for you. So Jaiya had a couple that she worked with, and they had gone to the same restaurant for their date night every week for 30 years, something like that. And they had only had sex in missionary position for the entire course of their 3-decade relationship.
Oh, my Lord.
Yeah, exactly. So everything for them was taboo. So if they changed to doggy style sex, oh my goodness, it was such a thrill. So just getting the permission to start to indulge in those things that were taboo for them, that they were kinky blueprint types.
And I just want to dispel mythology because I know the 50 Shades and we've had such an opening of conversation around this. But research shows that people who are actually kinky and wired kinky and who are kinky minded actually have very healthy mental health. It's been taken out of the DSM. Like there's so many things that we've evolved in our understanding of people who are kinky. And there's great communication skill. I'll say with people who are in this blueprint, it is a never ending creativity. They're also similar to an energetic. I know kinky people who don't need to be touched and they can have an orgasm just from a command.
Yeah.
You can train orgasm. You can play loud music and put a blindfold on, and they're in so much anticipation that the moment a door slams, they're having an orgasm. So there's a thing called subspace that they can go into. So there's a lot of superpowers here. And Ian mentioned the shadow, which is just deep, deep shame. Another shadow can be getting so fixated on a certain type of turn on that it becomes your only route to turn on, which can also be a struggle for some people where they only have one way because it's become so taboo that
they're fixated on it. It becomes like a neurotic obsession.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we've talked about the energetic, the sensual, the sexual, and the kinky. So if you're taking notes, hopefully you've got all those down. Mm-hmm. And then our last one is the shapeshifter. And if these were languages, if we just think about them as languages, the energetics like the calligraphy of a like Chinese or Japanese or something like this is this beautiful, light, energetic language. And then we've got French, which is our sensual. And then we've got American English, which is sexual. Our sexual. And then we've got our like some ancient Persian or something for kinky. But a shapeshifter is someone who's multilingual. There's somebody who can speak all of these languages. So if you've been listening and you're like, that's me, that's me, that's me. Oh my God, that's me too. You probably are a shapeshifter. Or if you're listening and you're like, I don't know what I am. You might be a shapeshifter as well. And so a shapeshifter superpower is that they can transform to be any lover's like fantasy. Like I can shapeshift to be sensual. I can shapeshift to be your kinky fan. Like I can shift and mold myself into anything because I have the ability to speak any language. Now, on the flip side, the shadow side of the shapeshifter is because I'm always molding and most people are unconscious that they're a shapeshifter. So they're molding to fit what another lover needs. They're never getting their own needs met. And this is the most voracious, the most, and I mean in a good way, the most erotically intelligent. They'll judge themselves as being too complex, needing too much, wanting too much. They may have had a lover in their past say, you're too much.
You're too loud.
Why do you need all this?
Yep.
Yeah. Calm this down.
You're exhausting.
We've been going for 15 minutes already. What do you want anymore? A shapeshifter will be an hour in and be like, wait a minute, we just started.
Where are you going? Yeah, I had an orgasm, but I got 20 more lined up.
That's funny.
And on the shadow side, they're judging themselves. I'm too much. I'm too big. I'm too bold. And then Ian mentioned our kind of like secret sixth type, which I kind of consider it a sixth type. So there's the shadow of the shapeshifter, which is what I just mentioned. And then there's like a shadow shapeshifter. And a shadow shapeshifter is somebody who has all the breaks, all the shadows, and none of the positive light aspects of any of the blueprints. So it's someone who's really stuck in that, and again, I want to go to, you're not broken. It's just how your eroticism has been wired into you. And there's always, and I'll give you the next steps of how do you work with these blueprints. And this is what to do. So everybody write these down. There's 4 of them. The first is to feed your blueprint. So whatever blueprint you are, feed it. So if you take the quiz and you find out what it is, learn how to really feed, indulge that blueprint, get fed. Because the majority of people out there, I'd say about 63%, according to my clinical research, is they're starving. Most people are starving sexually.
Yep.
The second is to learn how to speak the blueprint. So what are the words that you're using?
Each blueprint has a language that's going to get into their eroticism. And if you're using the wrong blueprint language with a certain type, it's total turnoff.
Yeah. And it's not just the words. It's also your body language.
Your vocal tone.
Your vocal tone. There's so much to it. I think it's 97% or something.
93% of communication is nonverbal.
Yeah. So we want to know how to communicate nonverbally, but also the words that we use. So speaking the blueprint and getting your blueprint spoken to in a way that feeds you. Then we have healing the blueprint. And this is where we heal the shadow parts. And you may have heard some of those shadow parts, and we didn't go deep into, there's 5 or 6 of them for each blueprint. We didn't go deep into them, but those shadow pieces are really important to focus on and heal. And then the final piece is expanding the blueprint. So once you've done that, now you're in a space where you can start to expand. Ian was not an energetic. He now can give me energetic orgasms. Like, it's pretty epic. He has developed into something that he was like completely judgmental of, completely like, I'm skeptical. What is this woo stuff?
I still am like, what is this? I'm good at it, but I don't know what I'm doing.
So he's expanded into the blueprint. I've expanded into kinky, which was mine that I had judgment about. It wasn't even in the blueprints. I had all the other ones in there.
Here I am a kinky,
and
like
Ian's
primary
kinky, and I didn't even have it in the map. So, that those pieces where we're judgmental, or the pieces where we're shut down, this is where we start to expand into and develop and wire our bodies, because we can wire our bodies for any kind of pleasure. I really believe it. I've seen it over and over again. I've worked with many clients to expand into new territory. And right now I'm expanding into sensual in a very deep way. You would have never believed my bedroom before. Like, if you saw it 2 months ago, you'd be like, no way in the world is there 1 ounce of sensual. Now I have furry blankets and candles and curtains, art on my wall, and flowers, like an aromatherapy diffuser.
We are capable of change and of evolution and transformation in our sexual selves.
Oh,
absolutely.
For sure. And, people also ask the question about, does this change over time? Your blueprint can change based on the partner you're with, because you may be being fed now in one of your blueprints, but you're starving in another.
Yeah.
Or it may be that because of the type of sexuality they are bringing to the relationship, your sexuality changes. All of a sudden you're expanding into something because it was never presented to you in your life before. Age can have an effect.
Hormones, biochemistry, injuries, having a baby, getting pregnant.
Your energetic world, like you could move from one house to another, and all of a sudden it's got fluorescent lights where your other one had incandescent lights and dimmers, and you're just completely not connected to your sexuality. So it can shift, very quickly, and it can shift over time.
That's awesome. Did we get to 4? Did we get to the 4th step?
Yeah. Feed, speak, heal, and expand.
Expand. Okay. Yeah. I missed that one.
Yeah.
Wow.
Jai had said it quickly earlier, but it's the blueprints can really show us where we're limited. So this is where the breakdown happens for a lot of couples, is they don't even know about the blueprints to begin with. So when they're presented with this other type of sexuality coming at them, it's a foreign language.
And I'll add for singles too, because when you're approaching somebody on a date, you may not get the signals that they're actually into you.
Oh,
because
right.
there's a blueprint, or you may approach them. And we had one of our students who told the story of, she always would approach from her blueprint,
which is kinky,
and then would F it up, she said. Because she wasn't recognizing and honoring in another person, and now she's got a really epic relationship.
Now she gets into a date and she reads, like she walked us through a whole date experience that she had. And
now they're energetic. Okay, now we're
he's
moving
leading with his
sensual.
Energetic. Oh wow! Now, and so she could mirror him, and she could feed back in that, and then it opened the next blueprint that he came, which was the sensual. And she didn't even think kinky was there, but after she went through all the blueprints over the course of an evening with him, not talking about any of it, just reading the energy and feeding him, being fed, she got to kinky. She's like, oh
yes,
my blueprints. He's got all of them.
That's amazing. So this is such a powerful work. So the Erotic Blueprint is free. The quiz is free online, right?
Yeah, you can go and take the assessment, find it out, and we have a video for you that'll tell you a little bit more. It's me there chatting away.
Yep, you just have to put in your email so that we can get you all the goodies, and then we keep feeding you more and more good stuff over the months to come.
Oh, that's great. And so, so the link is eroticbreakthrough.com/ignite. And again, we'll have that in the show notes. And I wonder, just before we wrap up for today, if you could just talk us through one of your energetic orgasmic experiences.
This is where it'd be really good to have a camera.
This would be like, I'm like, I kind of want to just do it so you guys can all hear it, but you can't see it. So essentially, Ian will put his hands hovering above my body. Mm-hmm. And what'll happen is it instantly goes to my genitals. I mean, it helps that I'm an energetic sexual, right? So I start feeling it and it starts to move through my whole spine, and my toes will curl, my back starts to arch, and I can be blindfolded. So I have no idea what Ian's doing, and my body will respond like a puppet.
Yeah.
You have a lot of fun doing it. How he tapped into it is through kinky. It's a way that he can feel like he's controlling my body completely.
Yeah. So during our 40-40 experiment, we had each set outcomes that we wanted to get to by the end of 40 days or somewhere in the midst of 40 days. And one of the things that I'd never experienced with Jaiya was this kind of like begging for it thing. Because she's sexual. She's just like, yeah, let's go for it. Let's do it. And there's no way for me to create that like, oh my God, I want it with her. And then that was one of my outcomes. I wasn't getting it. And somewhere towards the end of the 40 days, I just started playing with the energetic, and I tapped into using it to tease her so that I wasn't giving her what she wanted. I was just giving her deep anticipation, like, oh my God, I want more of it. So that became one way that I was able to really powerfully dominate her.
So he holds his hands over my body, and my whole body's like, touch me, touch me, touch me, touch me. Like I'm in all the anticipation. It's like a high note, like a, and then he'll like put his hands on my body, and it's like, ooh, like it just completely grounds my body out, and I'll just shake and I'll jerk and I'll like the orgasmic energy will just move through my whole body. It's awesome.
Oh my God, that sounds amazing. Well, I look forward to seeing that live and in the flesh one of these days. And Jaiya, Ian, thank you so much for joining us today. This is groundbreaking transformational work that you're doing at the foundation of an area of humanity that needs to be addressed, that needs to be evolved and transformed. And we all need to know more about ourselves as sexual beings, know more about how to flow with that energy, know how to heal trauma, know how to ask permission, know how to show up, and know how to read each other so that we are able to get the fullness out of our interactions.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Amen.
So if you want to take the Erotic Blueprint quiz, go to eroticbreakthrough.com/ignite. And then where else can people find you online?
Well, Jaiya.love is the main website. So JAIYA.love. If you type in JaiyaLove.com, it'll get you there too. On Facebook, it's Jaiya NWSE.
No, I think this is facebook.com/Jaiya.
Oh, it is?
Twitter's NWSE.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So Jaiya NWSE for Twitter.
Yeah.
And Instagram is Miss Jaiya, MISSJAIYA for Instagram.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, what a great pleasure to have you two. I love your energy. I'm just so inspired by your commitment to the erotic, your commitment to yourselves and each other, and just your courage in showing up in life and in relationship in such a powerful way. So I know that this conversation is going to inspire and ignite many of our listeners, Ignite Intimacy community. You heard it here. Jaiya and Ian, definitely check them out online. Find out what your erotic blueprint is. Come over to Facebook, come over to Instagram. Let us know what your erotic blueprint is. And if you have any questions or you want to contact us directly, just holler hello@igniteintimacy.com. And yeah, I think that's it for now. So thanks again, you two. This was awesome.
It's our
so
pleasure.
Welcome. Our pleasure.
Okay, cool. And everyone out there who's tuning in, thank you so much. Check us out. Go to iTunes, leave us a review and a rating, share it with your friends, and stay blessed. All right. Ciao for now. Thanks for tuning in to another conversation on the Ignite Intimacy podcast hotline. We love that you choose to spend your time with us. Check us out at igniteintimacy.com. Subscribe to us on iTunes and leave us a review and a rating. It helps more people know about us. We love to hear from you. You can email us with questions, comments, or suggestions to hello@igniteintimacy.com. And tell your friends. Music was arranged by Jason Pfaff and Mike Corey, and this podcast is produced by yours truly, Laura Aisha. Thanks again, and we'll see you on the next one. In the meantime, let your light shine bright and ignite your intimacy.